Good morning and welcome to Munich Säbener Street. As you can see by the clothes our security guys are wearing here, it is absolutely terrible weather here. It's cold, it's windy, it's rainy, but as you can also see, there's quite a bit of action going on in Bayern Munich's gym right now. The players are warming up there quite obviously before they'll go outside and train today and, well, enjoy this public training session. There's been some good news from the injured players at Bayern Munich recently, and I think we'll see part of that good news in a second or so. Let's have a look where he is, if he's still out there. Earlier today, I already saw one of Bayern's absolute superstars in training. Here he is, Franck Ribéry, since yesterday back on the pitch, and again it was yesterday and is today absolutely disgusting weather here. He doesn't care, and as you can also see, we noticed that yesterday and we were pleasantly surprised that it's not just running around the park a little bit, but Ribéry's actually working with, I suppose as you would say, high intensity. It's an Ancelotti word that he always loved to use, but it's becoming ever more popular to describe training sessions and what the players are expected to do in games. You can see he's still got a bandage there around his left knee, but Ribéry is back. We'll try to get an interview with him after his individual training session, see what he has to say about his comeback, his injury. You can find that later on in the afternoon in the FC Bayern TV news. So Ribéry is one of the players that we can see here today, and there are quite a few players in Munich. I'm not sure how many of them will come out to train today. It's a bit of a shot in the dark, really, today to speculate who's going to come out. Let's see Ribéry again, slow jogging, taking his breath there, and then sprinting quite quickly, or maybe not exactly a sprint, but a fast run. Couple of Bayern players missing, obviously. A couple of Bayern players traveling, but quite a few are here. Thomas Müller, for instance, also came out yesterday and trained on the pitch. I expect to see Juan Bernat in training later today. Arjen Robben, we're not sure exactly what his plans are. Thomas Wilhelmi, and this is the man on the right, and Holger Broich, who are mainly responsible for working with injured players, who are responsible for the physical therapy, for the fitness condition of the Bayern players, will of course work together with the players to come up with a plan that makes sense for the last break, of course, before the last stretch of games in 2017. And again, there's a couple. Müller is there, Juan Bernat is there, Javi Martinez was recently injured. We expect Bernat, for instance, to be outside on the pitch. The situation with Arjen Robben, quite honestly, I'm not too sure if he will train outside today or not. It is a bit of an unusual situation for everyone here because it is a week of training without the manager. Jupp Heynckes is taking a couple of days off after an incredibly strenuous and busy start to his fourth spell at Bayern Munich. He's enjoying these few days now, finally, to see his family again, see his wife and daughter again. And so Thomas Wilhelmi, Holger Broich are the men in charge here to a certain extent to train. Of course, Peter Hermann Gallant will conduct the training session later. There'll be quite a few reserve team players on the pitch, I'm sure. And then altogether, they'll try to, in some cases, maintain the fitness and endurance levels of the players that are fit. And again, in the other cases, try to build strength, try to help the players get back and support them in their recovery process. Franck Ribéry will probably have to be patient. We'll see if the French Bayern star can actually return in 2017 already. He indicated after his injury immediately that he's hoping he can play in 2017. The good news, of course, for Bayern Munich is, even if that might be bad news for Franck Ribéry, is that he's not actually needed at the moment. Franck Ribéry can always help Bayern Munich. He's a club icon and certainly always a great help for Bayern Munich. But in his absence, Kingsley Coman is doing such a fine job that it's not as if everyone's desperately waiting for Franck Ribéry's return because the results have been so terrible. On the contrary, 7 games under Jupp Heynckes. It started with a 5-0 win in the Bundesliga against Freiburg, 3-0 home win against Celtic Glasgow. Then maybe the most difficult one, a 1-0 away win in Hamburg. Penalty victory against Leipzig away from home in the DFB Cup. Then the Leipzig Bundesliga home game, a clear 2-0 victory. Celtic 2-1 victory away from home, followed by maybe the highlight, I suppose, at least with the Leipzig Cup game together, the 3-1 away win in Dortmund. 7 games, 7 wins, absolutely perfect start for Jupp Heynckes. And again now the last break for the national teams, only friendlies. It's a good break, I suppose, if you've had too much football in the last couple of weeks. If not, then it's definitely worth having a look at the Germany games. Mats Hummels, Jerome Boateng, Joshua Kimmich, Sebastian Rudi and Niklas Süle are traveling with the German national team. Short trips, though. First one goes to England on Friday, November 10th by Germany play England in London. And then a couple of days later, they play France in Cologne. So Kingsley Coman and Corentin Tolisso will meet their Bayern colleagues before or after they play against Wales. Thiago stays in Europe as well, playing Costa Rica and World Cup host Russia. Robert Lewandowski practicing for the World Championship, for his first World Championship participation with Poland against Uruguay and Mexico. And then Jupp Heynckes commented on this a couple days ago and called it absolute madness what James has to do. He is traveling to China to play South Korea in Suwon and then China in Chongqing. I'm not sure exactly how many thousands of miles we're talking about here, but it is, of course, incredible that in between 2 blocks of 7 games, 2 blocks where Bayern Munich play 3 games a week and are under intense stress and strain, you demand of national team players to fly across, literally fly across the globe to play in a couple of friendly games against South Korea and China. Well, so be it. In the end, I think we'll find that James again won't be able to play all of their games for Bayern Munich for his employer in the next couple of weeks. Ribéry is pumping, breathing heavily, but that's, of course, good news. It seems that he has completed his intense run program and will now just run a couple laps with Thomas Wilhelmi. It's an interesting situation for Franck Ribéry. And he's been there before, of course, but Ribéry is, I suppose you could say, under a little bit of pressure there by Kingsley Coman, although they get along very well. They're both, of course, hailing from France, and Ribéry is a player who does take responsibility in the Bayern squad, talks to young players, helps integrate foreign players. He's a very friendly, outgoing guy. But again, there's certainly a little bit of pressure and a little bit of competition coming from Kingsley Coman. Not that that's a bad thing for Bayern Munich. On the contrary, it seems, if we look at the last couple of weeks, that Bayern have indeed taken the first step to replacing their icons on the wing, Franck Ribéry and Arjen Robben, with Kingsley Coman. Bayern have, I find, a superstar in the making there. Coman, certainly the standout guy in recent weeks at Bayern Munich, the most spectacular guy at Bayern Munich. Again, there's a 2-week break now before the final stretch. Starting on November 18th, Bayern Munich play against Augsburg, a home game then in Anderlecht, a must-win situation there on November 22nd. Then again, away game in Gladbach in the Bundesliga, in home game then against Hanover, and then on December 5th, Bayern Munich play against PSG. As you can see, Franck Ribéry there, he's going to have a chat with one of my colleagues. As far as I can tell, the gym seems pretty empty. I'm not quite sure. Maybe their players are just stretching on the floor. Might still be a couple minutes before the first players come out. Sven Ulreich should be one of them. Again, Javi Martinez might come out today. Arjen Robben might come out. I'm not sure about that. Rafinha is there. Juan Bernat should come out. Tom Starke, I assume, will do so. David Alaba, we're not quite sure what the situation is with him. He was apparently a bit of a confusion there, sent back with an injury from the Austrian national team that Bayern Munich can't confirm yet. I think you can see now the players are actually on the floor. They're still stretching. Holger Broich here, you can see on the right, observing this warm-up program of the players. Going back to the upcoming schedule, December 5th, Bayern Munich play their home game against Paris, where some Bayern fans are still hoping that Bayern Munich might actually strike back and win the group. I was talking to Joshua Kimmich recently, who said, well, we'll have to wait and see. There's still a Champions League game to play before that. Paris need to beat Celtic there, although, of course, they are clear favourites to do so. And if that happens, then, of course, a 4-0 home victory against Paris is, I suppose, not within, not outside of the realms of a possibility, but of course highly unlikely. Frankfurt then on December 9th is another Bundesliga away game. Bayern then play 3 Bundesliga games within a week, a midweek home match against Cologne, and then the South German derby on December 16th against Stuttgart. And the last game before the winter break will then be another game against Dortmund in the DFB Cup, a knockout game that we can all look forward to already. And so that's going to be a stretch of 9 games then before the winter break. Here, a bit of a bird's eye view of what else goes on at Munich Säbener Street. Of course, a lot of youth teams have left the facility here and have gone to the campus, but still plenty of youth teams training here. The reserves still train here and, of course, still play in Grünwalder Street. But here, this camera angle gives you a nice little look over the facilities here at Bayern Munich. Of course, we can only see basically half of these facilities. Behind the camera, so to speak, are 2 more pitches. And still, it gives you an idea also of why Bayern Munich decided to expand and to found the FC Bayern campus in the north of Munich. It's simply not quite up to international standards anymore when you think about some of the Premier League clubs and their facilities with 20, 30 pitches. Here you basically have 3.5 to 4 lawn pitches and then artificial lawn as well. Just not quite up to standard. I think there are still some players up top there in the gym facility. Although slowly but surely, I think there's some commotion, and indeed, I think we're looking now at the first staff members, at least, to come out. Of course, there'll be some changes in the staff of Bayern Munich too. Yesterday, team physician Dr. Brown resigned from his position. It'll be interesting to see who joins Bayern Munich there. Fortunately for Bayern Munich, there are plenty of experts and professionals surrounding the team, so that a couple days without the head physician isn't much of a problem. Again, we're talking currently about a situation which formerly injured players need to work on their comebacks, and of course Thomas Wilhelmi, Holger Broich and the staff of physicians have enough expertise to handle that situation. Yeah, here is Peter Hermann. While Jupp Heynckes needs a holiday, Peter Hermann, a football animal, does not apparently. Same goes for Hermann Gerland, who I think is relishing this, the return to the pitch, the return to training sessions. Jupp Heynckes talked about the goals, or should I say maybe the plan for this week, and he said, explained why he was leaving home. First of all, he said, well, I am leaving home because Peter Hermann Gerland ordered me to do so and said I needed to take a couple of days off. It's been a very, very intense time. Jupp Heynckes said the players did a fantastic job here in recent weeks. It's been really strenuous, more and more training, more training intensity than under Carlo Ancelotti, more training sessions than under Ancelotti, a lot of team prep talks. This is Nicolas Feldhahn, a reserve team player and derby hero. Recently, Bayern Munich's reserve beat 1860. That's the first team of 1860, obviously, in the Munich derby. I always use the opportunity when I talk about it to recommend to everyone to go and see a Munich derby if you have the opportunity. It is quite interesting. And this guy who's coming out now, Ochi Reed, played his first derby and was overwhelmed. He said even before the game, I was just astonished at how crazy and how fanatic the fans are about this derby here in Munich. When you're not from Munich, it's a bit strange, of course, to think about it as such an important game, considering the difference in these two clubs in Munich, the difference in the quality, the difference in the standing and the image of these two clubs, but still, it matters still. It's very important. Here are Sven Ulreich and Arjen Robben and somebody else behind them wrapping up quite nicely. I can see, let's see which other professionals are going to come out here. Arjen Robben, what a goal against Dortmund on the weekend. Sven Ulreich. People tend to forget just how important his role is right now. It's always so difficult for a goalkeeper at Bayern Munich in recent years as the backup goalkeeper to Manuel Neuer. But it just goes to show how good the backup people are if they're given the time, if they're given the necessary time. Javi Martinez not looking too happy with the weather here. You can see loads of youth players. I see Milos Pantovic, I think Niklas Tarnat, Fabian Benko there. Martinez, key player in Jupp Heynckes' system, and happy as punch right now at Bayern, as you can see, perfectly starting to whistle on cue. Tom Starke, I can see. I think the last player here now is Felix Götze. Still haven't seen Juan Bernat, although he might have been one of the players covering his face. But again, even if Bernat isn't here, it's still very possible that that's just a normal part of his individual recovery program. Niklas Dorsch, I can see. Ah, here we go. There he is. Out on the pitch as well. And that's great news, of course. Juan Bernat, after a really good preseason, and I thought his best season at Bayern Munich last year. Oh boy, Rafinha, new haircut, Peter Hermann. Not quite sure if he enjoys it. I know Hermann Gallant isn't usually one for that kind of fancy attire. Maybe I should take the time after the training session to have a look at Rafinha's Twitter or Facebook account to see if he can tell us if this is a fashion statement or maybe a lost bet. So first couple of laps, the players, as you saw, already warmed up, stretched, stabilization exercises up top in the gym. Now a couple of exercise laps here before we start with the actual training session. Sven Ulreich and Tom Stark, and with these two goalkeepers, a total of 8 professionals on the pitch, not counting Felix Götze, Niklas Storch, Fabian Benko, some of which have professional contracts, but there's actually quite a few here. Ribéry, of course. We might actually see Müller. I've not counted him either, but Javi Martinez is in training, Arjen Robben is in training, Rafinha, Juan Bernat, and also Arturo Vidal. I just saw run past. Let's just quickly see. There we go, next to Javi Martinez, and yeah, in that Spanish-speaking group there with Rafinha and Bernat at the back. Here he is. Arturo Vidal has a special relationship with Jupp Heynckes, even if you wouldn't believe it. Jupp Heynckes told a funny story. Vidal, of course, was quite visibly angry that he was taken off the pitch recently, and Jupp Heynckes was asked about that and made it pretty clear that he didn't really care if Arturo Vidal was angry or not. He says, I'm the responsible man, I have to make these decisions, and the players have to adhere to what I tell them to do, full stop, end of story. And of course, Jupp Heynckes is in a position at Bayern Munich to be able to say that. There's no way that anyone is going to overemphasize the importance of a scene like that. Of course, also because Jupp Heynckes does such a good job mediating and such a good job in a diplomatic sense in keeping all the players happy. He told a little anecdote of Vidal's first game that Jupp Heynckes managed for Leverkusen. Arturo Vidal, in the way Jupp Heynckes tells the story, Vidal had a yellow card after 2 minutes in the game, hacked down another opponent after 10 minutes, and after 20 minutes it was time to get him off the pitch because he was in grave danger of conceding a red card. So Jupp Heynckes took Arturo Vidal off the pitch in Leverkusen after 20 minutes. Vidal was absolutely furious, was basically on his way out of the stadium back to the airport to go home to Chile. Jupp Heynckes said if he wants to do that, so be it, let him go. Didn't try to keep him back or anything. Vidal pulled himself together, and Jupp Heynckes says, and ever since we've been friends. It's going to take some friendship, I think, in the next couple of weeks between these two to keep Vidal calm. It's going to be tough for not only for Vidal, and not particularly because of him, but there's just so many great players in Bayern's midfield. James particularly noticeable in the last 2 games after, I'd say, difficult first couple of weeks and months at Bayern Munich. Also injury marred. Now James has shown some very, very good performance, assisted for Robben's goal against Dortmund, but also showed a fantastic performance against Leipzig in the Bundesliga, where he had 11 shots on goal or assists for shots on goal, which was is a Bundesliga record this season. No one's had more attempts on goal or has been involved in more attempts on goal. Yeah, it goes to show just how impactful James' performance was. And I think the statements of the Bayern players recently also indicated that it just took the Bayern players themselves some time to familiarize themselves with James. Robben, for instance, David Alaba, a couple of players commented on how James is a different type of winger if he does play on the wing. Against Dortmund, of course, James played behind Lewandowski in the center, but if he moves out with Coman and Robben in that 3-man attacking line, you have so much movement all the time that James does appear on the wings, and he's not like Robben or Coman where he picks up speed, or Ribéry who attacks opposition players alone and tries to get past them alone with a trick or two. James is a combination player who has a great left foot, great passing, great shooting skills. He's got a great eye, got great vision for his teammates, and is a very good player in using his teammates and positioning them well rather than creating scenes himself. And that's, of course, a very different way to play with this kind of player. I'm imagining how David Alaba, for instance, would play behind James on the left wing, which he has done before. That's very different to playing behind Kingsley Coman, who you just send down the line all the time, or Ribéry, who wants the ball all the time. But again, with James, with Thiago, with Martinez, with Rudy, and And I'm forgetting loads of people, I'm sure. Corentin Tolisso, for instance. There are so many good midfield players at Bayern Munich that it's going to be tough for all of them to play, particularly because it seems quite apparent that Javi Martinez will play. On the left here, Tim Walter, he's the coach of the reserve team, and of course most of his players are training here. I'm not sure what the schedule actually is for them today. Was it 2 days ago? I think yesterday maybe I overheard him talk to Kwasi Reed, who's in the center here of your picture, who had trained with the pros and then was asked to join the next training session with the reserve team. So those guys, Reed, Dorsch, who's waving here, those players who are not only reserve team players but also, yeah, some of the best reserve team players, and welcome, very welcome at Bayern Munich's pro team training sessions. They really have quite a bit of work to do. Holger Broich in charge here. I wonder if we'll see a lot of football today. We might actually miss quite a bit of football if they do play it today. We've decided to show you the first hour of this training session from 10 to 11. Half an hour is already gone. And if they do stay out, which seems longer than 11 o'clock, we might miss some football exercises or a game. But for us, it was important to show you who's out today, which players of the pro team in particular are here today to help. And I think Rafinha's haircut alone is worth watching this. Arjen Robben always first in line in the press conference in the build-up to the Champions League away game in Glasgow against Celtic. Joshua Kimmich was asked quite a few questions about Arjen Robben. Kimmich said, and of course the questions were, what can you learn from such a guy still being a young player? What is it that what does Robben bring to the team? What can you learn from him? And of course Kimmich commented on Robben, saying he's just an ultra professional. Every approach to every training session, to every game is admirable. He just goes 100% in every element, in every part of his job at all times. He is really is a training animal, Arjen Robben. But of course, in games, Kimmich benefits from him greatly as well, because Robben attracts 2, sometimes 3 players, and it's a good job that 2 or 3 players guard him, as we saw again against Dortmund. If you let him escape, Robben will hurt opposition teams. All of these exercises help strengthen the muscles, help I wouldn't exactly call them stabilization exercises, but this is certainly the kind of training session that the players will benefit from this last stretch of the season. I think we'll see this week a couple of more physical exercises, maybe not harder exercises than under Jupp Heynckes, but the focus is more on muscle build-up, on endurance, again on physicality. These kind of exercises here again are basically strengthening, stabilization exercise. Niklas Dorsch on the left, Rafinha on the right. Both of them hard to recognize. This is Felix Götze in the center, younger brother of Mario, who came on only against Bayern Munich. Pairs of two now. Let's see what Holger Broich has up his sleeve now. I am as confused as apparently Javi Martinez looks. I think this is going to be one of these training sessions that the coaches enjoy a lot more than the players. We've yet to even see a ball today. So one Martinez and Robin, I'm not sure if they really understood the point here. Basically, one of the players takes the lead here, the other one tries to follow, and then when one of them sprints to whichever direction he chooses, the other one was supposed to try and catch him, touch him, that is. Holger Broich said, please, no flying tackles. But it's about reaction time. You'll see this again. Player on the right, I think, is it the player on the right or the player on the left, basically decides where to go to. Then he sprints into one direction, the other one has to catch him. Yeah, this is, again, all good. Strengthens the muscles, thigh muscles, helps the players remain or even improve in terms of being explosive. But I think Holger Broich's little time to play here is over, it seems. Little break, and then Peter Hermann and Hermann Gerland, I assume, will take over. And maybe start with some football exercises. And there they are. Finally, a couple of footballs. Trying to hear what Peter Hamann is trying to explain here, but I suppose we'll see it in a minute anyway. What's interesting is that the exercises have become a little more complicated again, as they were under Jupp Heynckes already and then under Pep Guardiola. Ancelotti liked to keep it simple, liked to train the basics, passing, for instance, but here we always have different elements in one exercise, lots of movement. Jupp Heynckes always says, if you want the players to do something well during games on the pitch, it has to have happened already. They need to know what to do in specific situations because they've practiced these situations again and again and again. That's how he trains. I suppose that's Pep Guardiola's approach as well. Ancelotti was more about the basics and more about giving the players the responsibility on the pitch themselves. Heynckes has commented on slight muscle injuries and muscle problems that players have had. He says it's completely normal. Again, we have increased the intensity of training, the amount of training. There's been a lot of games, a lot of traveling as well. 7 games, I mentioned it, in the last 3 weeks, 4 of which were away from home. And in Glasgow, the players were gone a couple days. In Dortmund, 2 nights away from home. And Heynckes says it all plays a role. Different hotels, different hotel beds, away from the family, traveling, even if the trips, of course, weren't that long. It all plays a role, which is why Heynckes is also, as he says, a coach who doesn't want to take any risks whatsoever with his players. He was asked on Friday, I believe it was, if Franck Ribéry would possibly return in December already, and he says, one way or the other, I'm not taking any risks. And with Franck Ribéry, not particularly not. Peter Hamann, if you're not aware of who is in Jupp Heynckes' coaching staff, this is the man you need to know about. Jupp Heynckes, I think it's safe to say, insisted on Peter Hamann joining him at Munich. I wonder, although I think it's actually pretty clear, I think Jupp Heynckes would not have joined Bayern Munich without Peter Hamann. He says he needs him. This is his training guru. This is the guy who does gets his hands dirty, who does the day-to-day work, the groundwork, basically, whereas Heynckes is the coach who observes, who has the strategy, the philosophy, the tactical guidelines for the players. Hamann does the nitty-gritty work, and he is important for Jupp Heynckes. Bayern Munich had to pay a transfer sum for Hermann Galland, who was employed with Fortuna Düsseldorf as the assistant manager of Friedhelm Funkel, and was very successful there as well, taking Düsseldorf to top spot in the 2nd division at the time. And this is also very different. I noticed that immediately, and I think it's something that the Bayern officials enjoy here. There's a lot of talking again, a lot of encouragement. Peter Hamann is a guy who specifically addresses players, talks to them and says, good job, Arian, bad job, Arian, Rafinha, move faster, whatever it is. Again, quite different to what Bayern Munich experienced under Ancelotti, but also under Pep Guardiola. Don't get this wrong. This isn't criticism. But, of course, when you have coaching staffs consisting only of non-German speakers, at least it seemed as if the communication was below par, left room for improvement. It was immediately very conspicuous here in these first couple of training sessions. The criticism and the encouragement coming from the coaching staff is just on a bit of a new level. Again, you can see here these passing exercises, one-touch football, and with a couple of obstacles in the way as well. All of this is what Heynckes wants to see. And again, Peter Hermann calling in. Good job, bad job, you did well or not so well. Javi Martinez again, as I said, key player in Jupp Heynckes' system. Heynckes was quick to say that his predecessors were right in using Martinez in central defense because he's certainly capable of playing that. He said, I just have a different opinion. First of all, I thought it was interesting. He said, on an absolute top level, Martinez is too slow, in Heynckes' opinion, to play center back. Here's Toni Tapalovic in the center training with Sven Ulreich and Tom Starke. Let's talk about Sven Ulreich for a minute. Then fantastic saves against Dortmund. And I think it really showed, while there was always a bit of criticism of Sven Ulreich's performances in recent years, because when he performed for Bayern Munich, he played a game or two and just didn't look as secure as Manuel Neuer usually does. Now, that isn't much of a surprise. We're talking about the backup goalkeeper to the best goalkeeper in the world. But I think now that Sven Ulreich has had plenty of time to settle in, now that he realizes, and that's most important, and Jupp Heynckes actually commented on that as well, now that Sven Ulreich knows he's in. He's going to play. He's going to keep playing, regardless if he makes a mistake or not, because Sven Ulreich is now the backup guy in the absence of Manuel Neuer. And now that he feels that trust, now that he feels that confidence that no matter if he shows a mistake, that doesn't mean that he's not going to play the next game. Now he's playing better. Now he's really showing absolute top performances. And I think some performances that at least some experts and some fans too find surprising. We've, of course, been fortunate enough to always see him perform here at Bayern Munich. Everyone here knows how good Sven Ulreich is. Again, sometimes the performance is dwarfed by what Manuel Neuer shows, but in recent weeks, I have to honestly say, Sven Ulreich, a very, very impressive stronghold at the back for Bayern Munich. There he is again, and personally, I have to say, quite happy for him. Really, really nice, friendly guy, as is Tom Starke, and as is Manuel Neuer, too. By the way, really good group of guys. I'm sure Toni Tapalovic, and I know Toni Tapalovic loves working with these guys because they're good, they're willing to learn. Even Tom Starke, at that age, didn't hesitate. You know, as a Bayern fan, I'm sure he shouldn't even be here. Tom Starke basically quit professional football in summer to become somewhat of a goal coach, a goalkeeping mentor, a coach and a manager for Bayern Munich's goalkeepers throughout the youth teams. But when Manuel Neuer sustained injury, Starke was quick to agree on a return. He had stayed fit anyway and is now the backup to Sven Ulreich. I remember a couple of weeks ago, we were talking to a couple of colleagues from different newspapers, and some actually suggested Tom Starke should go back in goal. This was after a mistake or two by Sven Ulreich. Starke is also a very, very reliable second goalkeeper. Again, as you can hear, Peter Hermann constantly talking, constantly telling the players what's good, what's bad, what if he expects a sharper pass, if the pass was too much. Hermann, Peter Hermann that is, and Jupp Heynckes have said what a joy it is, or what satisfaction it gives them to work with the players again, because they just listen so well. And they've accepted and been prepared to welcome the coaches back. Okay, 4 against 4 is what this is going to be. 2 contacts. The players on the outside are only allowed to use 1 touch. Solo un contacto. For the outside players, that is. Inside, 2 contacts. I've seen it many times before, but I'll tell you, I still find it fascinating to see just how good the passing game of Bayern youth and reserve team players is. That's never an issue for the young guys who come out of the youth academy. Niklas Dorsch, Fabian Benko on the outside. Here Robin has allowed 2 touches. Bernard only 1, being outfield. Ochi, that's taking too long, Peter Hermann says. Again, there's immediate feedback at all times in every training session. The players know they're not only watched, but immediately scrutinized, analyzed. Irene Robin with Felix Götze. Bernard again, double pass Rafinha. Very well played. And Robin, even in that situation, he finds the right solution. Beautifully played here. This is the kind of exercise that if you play it in every normal football clubs, it'll probably go out of hand completely. Here at Bayern, the players just have the automatic skill. We've been on air for nearly an hour now. We're going to end this in a few minutes time. Couple more minutes, maybe 3 or 4 minutes. We'll stay on air for you to give you here a few more impressions from Munich Säbener Street. But I think it's safe to say you got an impression of what's going on here. Peter Hermann Gerland still working day and night for this club. Jupp Heynckes is taking a couple of days of rest. He's in the pressure seat, of course. For him, it is a bit of a pressure situation, more so for these guys. But look at the involvement there of Peter Hermann, and this is the story of his life in a nutshell in a training session. Happy with what he's seeing here. Saying, and this is what he's referring to now, this is just important when you, in a normal football game, in a competitive situation, particularly going forward, this is what you have to do. One-touch football, quick reactions, you don't have time in a professional football game. And of course, Ancelotti used to practice these exercises a lot as well. But it's the kind of exercise on a small, confined space that allows the players not only to practice their passing game, their one-touch football, but what's more important, of course, is the players start building an awareness for what the next step is. That's, of course, the biggest difficulty, I suppose, and what makes a good player, a great player. A good player can stop a pass like this. He can control it and then play a good pass to the next player. A great player doesn't need to do that because a great player knows where the next pass is going to be played before he actually makes contact. And these are the exact exercises that practice this. Again, we're going to stay on air for 1 or 2 more minutes. Here, suffice to say that everyone who is in Munich is working hard. We expect to see Thomas Müller out on the pitch later on. Franck Ribéry was already outside, as you saw, and as announced, we had a little interview with him, so stay tuned later on in the afternoon for an English news, where we'll summarize the first 2 or 3 days here without the national team players. So Ribéry working on his comeback, Müller working on his comeback, Bernat in training, Martinez, Vidal in training. Seems as if at least the first few days of this last but national team break are being used very well by Bayern Munich's coaching staff. I hope you enjoyed this training session here in Munich. We'll keep you updated with what goes on. Little news program later today, and then on Thursday we're planning the next one, and then I think we're all going to enjoy a weekend without club football. Up to you to decide if you want to play, if you want to watch some more, maybe with some Bayern players or with the Arturo Vidal lookalike in the background there. Arian Robin with the final pass. I'd like to say thanks again for showing interest. Thanks for watching. Enjoy a club football free weekend, and see you soon.